There's been a lot of talk about regime change from Israel, from Donald Trump, from many voices in the West over the last couple of days. And certainly there are many inside Iran who would love to see political change in their country. But under these conditions, with the war, with the destruction, with the hostility that Iran has been under, is this now, this concept of regime change, more or less likely to happen following this war?
I think it has always been
أشهد أن
uh,
لا إله
it has always been more of an illusion than reality. Regime change, the idea of regime change in Iran has never been realistic. Why? Not because the Iranian regime is popular at home. We know there are millions of Iranians who look at the regime and see an oppressive regime, a regime that basically encroaching on people's lives. Young people in particular, men and women, would like a freer life. They would like to basically be able to bark, to breathe. And the oppressiveness of the clerical regime has made it very unpopular. We've seen hundreds of thousands of Iranians who have protested against the regime. But when you read what the question of regime change implies, you have local proxies. You don't have local proxies in Iran, as the United States had in Iraq, or as the West had in Libya. There are no local proxies outside. There is no alternative inside Iran. There is no external alternative. And the Iranian regime, despite its unpopularity, has a legitimate revolutionary base of support. That is, there are hundreds of thousands of people who would die, who would fight to the end to defend the regime. So despite the waning of the legitimacy of the clerics in Tehran, they have a certain revolutionary legitimacy. It's deeply entrenched. It's not a one-man show like you have in the Arab world. It's institutionalized. To give you an idea what I mean by that, when Israel and the United States threatened to kill the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, what did Ali Khamenei do? He transferred most of his powers to the National Security Council. In Iran, you have a National Security Council, collective decision-making process that decides on questions of war and peace. So it's not a one-man show, even though the supreme leader is the commander-in-chief in Iran. So there is neither a viable domestic alternative, and there is no viable alternative, to the regime itself. What Israel has been trying to do is to trigger civil strife, to try to trigger civil strife, that try to really get to Netanyahu has addressed the Iranian people multiple times. He wants them to rise up, stand up against the Iranian regime. One thing we know about Iranians, like everyone else, they are nationalistic. They are patriotic. When their country and sovereignty and nation is attacked, they rally around the flag. In fact, many Iranians are angry at the regime, not because it involved them in a war against Israel, but because the regime did not weaponize their nuclear program. Many Iranians say, look, you've spent billions. Look at the sweat and the hardship we have done. Why would you allow yourself to be vulnerable? Why would you allow Iran to be humiliated? Why would you allow yourself to be attacked by a small state like Israel? So in fact, what we have seen on the whole, and I could be wrong, of course, I am outside now, is that we're seeing a bit of the rallying around the flag, as opposed to really standing up against the regime itself.
Finally, Professor, Iran is often portrayed in the West as this regional pariah state that is, for decades, a sponsor of terrorism in the region and single-handedly preventing stability in the Middle East. Do you think this is an accurate picture of what Iran is?
I think, and this is for your own viewers, the Western narrative, the dominant Western narrative, has succeeded in demonizing Iran. Wherever you go, I can tell you, I am a professor here at the London School of Economics. I get invited to many think tanks. It's so hard to find a Western politician or policymaker or analyst who does not think that Iran is a rogue state, who does not think that Iran represents a threat to regional stability and international stability. This is deeply ingrained because of the demonization against Iran since the 1980s, after the American hostages, after, Iranian student took Iranian hostages, American hostages after the Iranian Revolution in 1980. So it's really widespread. It's taken for granted now. Popular discussion, popular debate. Iran, the clerics are seen as the central source of instability. And my take on it, before I directly answer your question, Iranian leaders have been their own worst enemies. They have not really done much to try to change this dominant narrative. They have not really basically tried to appeal to, think tanks and Western public opinion. And also, I think what we need to understand is that Iran regional rivalries with its Arab neighbors have basically alienated public opinion in the region, in particular its rivalry with the Sunni-dominated state, Saudi Arabia. And I think what Iran did in Syria by intervening in Syria in 2011 to basically prevent the collapse of Bashar al-Assad really turned the world against Iran and reinforced the idea that Iran was a rogue state. But the reality is, Iran has never aggressed against its neighbors. Iran has never declared wars against its neighbors. Iran's foreign policy has been extremely cautious, extremely defensive, extremely calculating, extrememely rational, of course, with the exception of its intervention in Syria. So really, it's not Iran that's the central source of instability, it's Israel. What Israel has been doing to the Palestinians on the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, and now in Gaza. This is really the source of instability. But of course, Iran has been portrayed as the source of instability because the dominant narrative has taken hold of, Western imagination.